Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is part 2 of our Loki Episode 1 Glorious Purpose open spoiler discussion. Now, we did part 1 on Wednesday after the show had aired, and we do that live, of course. However, we didn't get quite through all of the questions that got sent in. We still had a handful of the ones that we didn't have time to get around to because I had to get to another birthday party situation. We had gone about 2 hours. So here we are to wrap up all those questions. So without any further ado, without wasting any time, let's get right into it, shall we? Talking about, and by the way, just again, in case the title of this video didn't give it away, this is an open spoiler discussion. So if you have not seen Loki episode 1 yet, you might want to come back to this a little bit later, but you have been warned. All right, let's get things picked up here with Sam Wright, who writes, for somebody who has struggled myself, I know these shows use therapy and almost normalize it. Yeah, I really like that, actually. Specifically for men. Bucky and Falcon the Winter Soldier, and Loki really opening up. Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard trailer, too. Yeah, listen, I actually really appreciate that. Look, there has been a stigmatism over the years to therapy, particularly with men. Like, I don't know, for some reason, men think, like, getting therapy is somehow a sign of weakness. But like when you go to the gym, you're exercising muscles to develop them to make you stronger. We don't see going to the gym as a sign of weakness. And I think therapy can be incredible for all sorts of things in life. And as a matter of fact, like, you guys won't know this if you only watch my YouTube videos, but if you just listen to the podcast version of the show, we've had a new sponsor recently, actually. And I swear, this isn't a plant question. This is honestly there. But we've had a new sponsor on the podcast version of the John Campea Show, Talkspace, which is like making therapy more accessible to people. So, yeah, I mean, I think we need to start, and I think we are starting to look at, seeking, having somebody to talk to and seeking counseling sometimes is much in the mental way of physically going to the gym. It's not weakness to go to the gym. I mean, you're going to the gym to get healthier, get stronger, and get more capable. I think doing therapy is the same thing. So I am glad, like Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, Falcon the Winter Soldier, and even to some degree Loki is kind of normalizing that, because we should normalize that. Not that everybody needs to do it, but I mean, I think we should normalize it. And we should get rid of that stigmatism. Anyway, thanks for writing that in, Sam. Appreciate that, dude. All right, next up. Lars Hansen writes, people's free will does not exist in the MCU universe if everything people do is planned in advance. Again, I don't think that's what Loki was describing. We talked in episode 1 about this, about the difference between predestination, meaning there's some greater power deciding what you will do or say, versus foreknowledge, which means there's some kind of being that knows what you are going to choose to do or say. And when they talk about the sacred timeline, I don't think it's about the timekeepers writing out every line that everybody says or does. It's not about that. It's that they know what everybody says or does. Therefore, they know how everything is supposed to happen in the timeline. So that's the difference that I see with that. That is the difference to me between a fatalistic predestination versus a destiny choice-based kind of philosophy of foreknowledge. And I believe, and I might change my mind, like once we get in episodes 3, 4, 5, 6 of Loki, maybe I'll change my mind of how I perceive what they're portraying. But the way I perceived it as an audience member wasn't that they were saying nobody has free will. It's that there's somebody who already knows every choice you're going to make. Not that they're making the choices for you. They just know the choices you're going to make. Predestination versus foreknowledge. Anyway, there's that. All right, thanks for writing that in, Lars. All right, next up. Peter Cunnington writes, is Loki gender fluid? Well, apparently, yes. Listen, Loki has been, like the Marvel writers of the comics said, Loki has actually been gender fluid for a long time in the comics. Thousands of years in the comics. And yes, they do say, like in his rap sheet, it says gender and it says fluid, right? In the show. But at the same time, I don't know how gender fluid he is, because they constantly refer to him as, he. Thor exclusively refers to him as brother, and, Loki says that as well. Loki refers to himself as Odin's son, things like that. But yeah, they're saying he is gender fluid, so he's gender fluid. All right, next up. Pedro Feria writes, the score was outstanding, the city scene, bruh. Listen, I'll tell you what, one of the things that these Disney Plus Marvel shows have done really well and we first noticed it back with WandaVision, is that the music is fantastic. Kevin Feige said that they're bringing a cinematic approach to their shows, and I don't know that there's anywhere that shows itself more than in how they treat the music in these shows, because I'm with you, Pedro, man. I think they've done a great job with that. All right, Fanblaze71 writes, "Hey, John, this Loki series is already looking to be my favorite of the Disney Plus shows. The scene where he saw his mom and himself die was super sad." Yeah, I mean, listen, the scene where he actually sees Frigga die is amazing, because there's two layers of sadness going on there, right? There's two layers. Layer number one of my mother dies soon. In his perception of time, soon. My mom dies real soon. And seeing his mother, who he loves dearly, dead is very powerful. So there's that sadness. And then there's the grief of realizing that inadvertently his choices are what led to her dying. So there's a grief and a guilt that come with that as well. And then seeing his own demise at the hands of Thanos, which also compounds that grief and guilt, because he knows, I'm the one who engaged with Thanos. I engaged with Thanos to get the scepter from him, and I went to Earth in the first place to conquer Earth for him and all that kind of stuff. So it's grief and sadness compounding on top of each other, finally leading to that scene where he has that big moment of self-realization saying, I'm the deception. I'm the illusion of control, or the illusion of power to give some sense of control. It was powerful. It was well done. I absolutely loved it, Fanblaze. All right. Arun and Ada writes, another Loki, maybe Lady Loki. It's possible. Look, I said at the end, I turned to Anne at the end of episode 1 and I said, Mobius just said that we're hunting you, like another version of you, and yet they still kept whoever that was in the last scene covered in a cloak. So obviously there's some kind of twist going on, right? To me, that's why I said to Anne at the end of the first episode, I still believe that. All right. Aaron Epstein writes, first Endgame and now Loki. It's nice to see Thor, the Dark World, getting more importance in the MCU. And, we talked about this in part 1 of this. While Thor, the Dark World, listen, I love the first Thor movie. I believe it is the second most underrated comic book movie ever, second only to Man of Steel. I think Man of Steel is the most underrated comic book film of all time. I think the first Thor, directed by the great Kenneth Branagh, is the second most underrated comic book film of all time. And I think Captain America, the First Avenger, is the third most underrated comic book film of all time. That's just my kind of take on it. But Thor, the Dark World was a step down. And I would say it's in the bottom part of, I still think it's pretty good, but it's in the bottom part of MCU films in terms of quality. But you can never deny the importance of the film. There's a lot of very significant things that happen and are introduced in that movie. And the fact that we are going back to that now and seeing the way to that. And that's one of the great things about the MCU. Things happen in these movies and they're not just forgotten. What's the word I'm looking for? But the ripple effect of things that happen in these movies come back into play later on, including one of the weaker films like Thor, the Dark World, because those things were important. You're right about that. All right, next up. Charles Grindstaff writes, theory for later, as of now, Loki is playing the TVA. I want to say something to that, but I've seen episode 2, so I don't want to say anything that makes you understand that your statement is totally wrong, nor do I want to say anything that's going to make you understand that your statement's totally right. So I'm just going to withdraw that. Just say, keep that in mind, Charles. Keep that in mind, because they do kind of address this a little bit more in episode 2. So you'll see where they go with that. All right. Jake Scrabbacks. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing your name, Jake. What is purpose if not glory persevering? Nice little callback there to WandaVision. What is love? What is grief if not love persevering? What is purpose if not glory persevering? Glorious purpose. Well said. Good play on words there, Jake. All right, next up. Jordan Risley writes, hey, John, I believe the guy did not know what a fish was because he was a variant. Because he was a variant, had been reset, aka his memory was wiped, and he was put to work at the TVA. Well, I mean, I suppose there's a possibility of that, but remember, in episode 1, they explicitly state that all the people working at the TVA were creations of the Timekeepers. Now, maybe we'll find out down the line that that's not true. Maybe we'll find out down the line that they are all people who've been plucked from, their various timelines and universes and put to work at the TVA. Maybe. But as of right now, what they have stated and what we don't have any real solid reason to not believe is that they were created to be, the team at the TVA. So we'll see where they go with that. But if that does turn out, Jordan, we'll remember that you said that. All right. Pedro Faria writes, over under 20%. The next big thing is a multiverse war. I'm going to go under, only because right now we've got Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness coming. And I have said for a couple of years now, ever since they announced the Multiverse of Madness, I've said for a couple of years, you guys know this is true, that I believe that Doctor Strange 2 is where they're going to wrap up any multiverse stuff. I believe they're going to bring multiverse stuff to a conclusion in Doctor Strange 2. So for that, since I'm standing by that, doesn't mean I'm right. I don't have any insider information. I'm just speculating like everybody else. But because of that, I'm going to guess under 20%. All right. Tyler Pfeiffer writes, Loki was treated like a doofus to start the episode, but I love how it took him all of half an hour to figure out how to escape his restraints. Well, it's not, here's the thing. I never felt like they were treating him like a doofus. Remember, he is Asgardian. Like, Loki is somebody who has engaged with and seen everything in the 9 realms, including engaging with Thanos himself. He has wielded Infinity Stones, going all the way back to the first Avengers movie. Like, Loki, and he has done it for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. He's seen it all. He's done it all. At least he thought so. And then for a character like that to be confronted with something that is supposedly way above, not only way above and beyond him, but something even above and beyond his own father, Odin, the All-Father, even above that. So yeah, I would think like any being like Loki suddenly confronted with a reality shift like that is probably at first going to kind of maybe appear a little bit doofus-like. Is like, wait, what is going on? Completely out of his element. But you're right. It didn't take him long to adjust and take advantage of the situation. I did like that a lot. All right. Jordan Risley writes, do you think the path of this Loki can turn out to be better in character, like a good guy, than the Loki who dies in Endgame? Well, I don't know how. Listen, you got to remember, Jordan, this Loki, remember, this is the same Loki. It's just we're going back to see him again at a previous point in time. If it weren't for the Tesseract to dropping at his feet and taking it and escaping, this Loki was going to do every single thing that the Loki we know didn't say. It's the same Loki for all intents and purposes. Can he turn out better? I don't know how you... Ultimately, Loki died trying to save his brother and stop Thanos. Like, ultimately, he died trying to save his brother and stop Thanos. How do you go beyond that? Like, what more can you do? When, seeing, like, he could have got away. He could have kept the Tesseract. When Thanos said, give it to me, I'm going to hurt your brother. He's like, kill away. But seeing his brother in pain, he's like, okay, stop. So, I mean, maybe, but I don't know. I mean, look, at the end of the day, in Endgame, Loki died a hero. He really did. He died a hero. So I don't know how much better you can be than that, but we'll see what they do with it, Jordan. All right. Empire Fan 1980 writes, they showed that blonde waitress, Ashley Johnson again. Yes, they did in the background memory tapes. That's right. I never understood with her. I never understood what with her they should her. Let me try this again. They showed that blonde waitress, Ashley Johnson, who went on to be in that TV show about the girl with no memories. Again, Blind Spot. I think that was the name of the show. Anyway, I never understood what with her they should her a lot in Avengers, then nothing happened with her. Okay, right. Yeah, so I don't know. I think she just kind of became the face of us. I think in that situation, both in Avengers and what they're doing, she kind of became our avatar. Like, she was the representation of the average person and seeing this incredible stuff going on with these incredible individuals. So I think instead of just showing 35 different faces, they kind of made her our avatar in that. You know what I mean? That's just my guess in it. Or maybe she's somebody's cousin. I don't know. Empire Fan also writes, be careful, John. If you spoil episode 2, the TVA will come for you, unless me spoiling episode 2 was destined within the sacred timeline. At this point right here, the blue sling button, the Sling TV button, at this point in the sacred timeline, John is supposed to spoil episode 2. Did you think about that? Did you think about that? I didn't think so. All right, next up, we got Suthius, who writes, I don't know much of Kang from comics, but in this series of the MCU, I can see him as a keeper who was demoted or cast out by his fellow keepers. Hence, while we'll see him in Ant-Man Quantumania. Yeah, so that has been a topic of conversation that's come up a bunch lately. Is some people noticed, I didn't, and even when I look back on it, I didn't really see it, but a bunch of people online, some of the trades even, are saying, oh, one of the timekeepers is Kang. Which, I mean, that connects the dots because Kang is a time traveler. That's kind of his whole thing if you go back to the comics. And Kang is a very convoluted, multiple versions, very, very convoluted story in the comics, at any rate. And we know that Kevin Feige doesn't do everything exactly the way it is in the comics mostly. So for him to suggest that Kang is one of the timekeepers here, which he is not, I don't believe, in any of the renditions of the comics, that is a possibility here. And we could find out that, he's actually a timekeeper, but he yearns more power, or maybe he's cast out by the other timekeepers. Look, there's something going on there. We will find out if Kang is one of the timekeepers or not. We'll find out. Right now, we just don't know. I'm starting to believe it. I'm still not all the way there, but I am starting to believe it. We'll see where they go with it. All right, Donald Thomas and The Harsh Truth both sent in super chat badges just to be supportive. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. All right, Rob Fritz writes, I think the timekeepers are totally a Wizard of Oz type of situation, and some other power is just using that mythology to advance their own goals. Well, that's not a bad theory, Rob. That's not a bad theory, but it once again goes back to the notion of, is Kang one of those guys? Is this where Kang comes from? Because if Kang comes from here, then no, they're not some artificial thing. But maybe there is a Wizard of Oz situation where they are the three guys behind the curtain. Maybe they're not the all-powerful, beings like the Wizard of Oz, but they are the guys in control and in charge, and maybe Kang's one of them, maybe he's not. So I think, Rob, we're going to get our answer from that when we find out more about, is one of those guys Kang the Conqueror or not? We'll find out soon enough. All right. Final question that got sent in for our Loki episode 1 spoiler review. I told you we didn't have too many to get caught up on here, but comes to us from Daryl Bess Wadley, who writes, they speak of a multiverse war. That's Avengers 5. I mean, it's possible, but again, I don't think this multiverse stuff is going to go on for long. I still believe, and again, no insider information. This is just me as a fan speculating, just like everybody else. But I believe now, and I've believed for a long time, that the Doctor Strange movie is going to be the end of multiverse stuff. I think they're playing with multiverse stuff from Endgame to Doctor Strange 2. Endgame's where it really kind of came into prominent being. And then in Doctor Strange 2 is when they're going to wrap it up. And I think that's that. So I don't think by the time we get around to Avengers 5, I don't think it's going to be a multiverse thing. I think Doctor Strange is going to finish it. Now, ask me that again by the time Loki ends, because we might get more information by the end of Loki that makes me change my mind. Hey, that's what we do, right? When we get new information, we have to evaluate what our theories are. Right now, my theory, as it has been for a couple of years now, is I'm sticking with the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness is the end of the multiverse stuff. All right, guys. With that all said, we have now gotten through all the questions that got sent in during our Loki episode 1 open spoiler discussion. Don't forget, guys, on Tuesday, we start back up the pregame show because Tuesday is game day because, for us on the West Coast, Loki comes out at midnight that night. So we're going to have our Loki pregame show, episode 2 pregame show on Tuesday night, and then we're going to do our episode 2 spoiler discussion the following day on Wednesday evening. I hope you guys are able to join us then for that. All right, guys, that will do it for me. Loki is off to a tremendously great start. We talked about on the John Campea Show earlier today that it had the biggest premiere numbers out of any of the other Disney Plus shows so far, which shows there was a lot of interest in this show. I think there's going to continue to be. Episode 1 was fantastic. Can't wait for you guys to see episode 2, and I can't wait to see episode 3. So let's see how it goes. All right, guys, thanks a lot for being here. My name is John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.